Hey, what is up, guys? Evan Aldo here. I am in Key Biscayne, Florida right now. Got a nice new lavalier microphone, which I've been meaning to use and meaning to make one of these videos for a while. Just kind of haven't had the most, had some good ideas definitely to talk about, but didn't have, like, I don't know, the energy or whatever. Probably some stupid excuse, but I wanted to get into a few things today. I mean, you look at kind of what's happening, right now. You look at kind of the state of the markets. Obviously, it's like a big kind of, debate. I don't want to talk about too much of the markets, but it's a big debate. Do we push through 25K and get higher, or is this, the end of this bear market rally? And I think, whether it's a bear market rally or whether it ends up being more than that is kind of what we're gonna, determine soon. And it's tough to say. A lot of people always in the comments are always talking about, trade against the masses, trade against this. It's hard to even tell completely, what the masses think. The masses flop and grope. The masses change their mind. The masses, you know what I mean? It's a little tough to say. So any strategy, anything, it's all probability. Anything could happen in life. That's what the most important thing that sometimes I know about, but sometimes that I forget to talk about enough because I know there's always new people. There's always differences. There's always things changing in life. Things are very transient, I guess that's maybe a good word to use to describe this. Things are changing, and some things typically do things seem the same, stay the same. I know Elon Musk said that a lot of people don't change, they just die, which is true. I would say probably, yeah, probably the majority, probably at least a slim majority. I would say that would kind of fall into that category. They don't really change. They, just die. They're gone or whatever. And you talk about filial piety, which is essentially ancestor worship. I think filial piety. Believe it's considered ancestor worship, which is, but I think the main concept in Confucianism. People, I remember talking about this, and people typically laugh laugh at me. They never let me, like, kind of finish the point about this. Um, you know, it's kind of like no matter what you do, you will become your parents. So you need to worship them, which, a lot of people, it kind of irritates some people at face value if they wanted to, like, be better or be greater than their parents or be different and, well, obviously better. But others would probably, if they looked up to their parents, probably like it, at least to a certain extent, would probably like what they're hearing. They would like that kind of quote. I hope the sound isn't too bad. I think this microphone is going to give us what we need, hopefully, here. I probably don't even have it on right, but bear with me. I don't know if this recording will make the light today, but yeah, and you look at that, and kind of as time goes by, it's kind of, I remember when you're kind of young, your parents always tell you, because I said so, or maybe not everybody's, but you'll understand when you're older. And I think in some cases, some cases those things can be true. So other cases, kind of maybe make a conclusion that's different than theirs. But a lot of it does kind of play out. A lot of it's subconscious programming. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this a ton. It's all subconscious. It's not the conscious. Consciously, you think you're completely different than the people around you, but you're subconscious, the programming. A lot of it is the programming. A lot of it is how you were programmed when you were young. First 7 years of life is very crucial in that. Very crucial. Probably even the elementary school you went to, first grade, kindergarten, that type of stuff. A lot of programming there. A lot of big area. And not to say you can't change it. Not to say you can't. That's a whole. That would be pretty sad if you couldn't. I would probably not even be talking about it if you couldn't, because I like to be more optimistic overall. Though somebody would look at my market predictions and say, "No, you're too much doom and gloom." That's what I interpret by the charts. Could be wrong. We've been generally right about it. Since well, me. I mean, I don't know, we or people that agree with me. You know, people at least. you know, um, Generally been right about it since April of 2022. So that's been going on. That's been going on for a good amount of time. And, that's what we got to look at. But to be optimistic is there's always an opportunity. Great Depression, what did they say? 30% of people made more money during the Great Depression. So it doesn't necessarily mean that. But, it's a wealth moves around, and at the end of the day, it's all just energy. Don't take things too seriously. Don't take things too seriously, because everything is temporary. Was it some Buddhist principles like there's no causes, there's only causes or conditions, or there's no causes or conditions? Oh man, I'm forgetting. It's been a few years, but yeah, I mean, it's all. But it doesn't mean, like, the thing too is people say this stuff. You're all gonna die. We're gonna die. One day anyway. It doesn't even matter. And they kind of use that as an excuse. Don't live a healthy lifestyle. Don't do anything. Just be lazy and self-indulgent and just going for cheap dopamine. No, that's not. That's ultimately not what you want to do. And ultimately, if you don't, you could have more satisfaction and probably more, happiness if you don't go for the cheap dopamine. You could, even in the present moment. So it's important, to stay in the present moment. It's important to get out in the sun. That's another really important thing, because it's hard for a lot of people to take the time to stay outside, to explore. And, you look at like America in a lot of ways compared to, maybe other places. And I don't know, it's like the more like traditional kind of places, the more places that are, 20 years back in time, 20 years behind the US or Western Europe. A lot of them, I don't know, feel like you have more. And that's not to say any place is better or worse, but sometimes you have more like emphasis on some time away from the technology, some more time in nature, at least to a certain extent. And that's really important. I think that's what we've gotten away from. You look at, what are the things happening right now? You got ChatGPT, which is huge. I think that's only going to get better. It's going to take time, though. It's going to take time. I mean, what it can do, it's pretty good. I mean, just asking it like questions. Definitely the main utility that I would think is, obviously for writing essays, for stuff like that, for like high school, college, that's interesting. It definitely can't write you a good essay, but I feel like from what I was playing around with, it could help you a lot there. So just making things more efficient. And well, I mean, for a high school level, you probably could get away with it. I don't know how they're going to combat that. That's interesting. I'd have to curious what's happening with that. Like, yeah, because writing essays when I was in high school, man, I hated that stuff. Really did not like that stuff. And so you look at that, look at the newer technology. And I think people talk about this as like, nobody's going to be able to make money because of it. It's going to be harder to get rich. We're all going to be the same. And I kind of don't agree with that completely. I think there's going to be, as you come into, it looks like we're going to go into a recession. It looks like this isn't going to be the greatest next decade, next 8 to 10 years, I would say. But at the same time, I think that, if you have kind of with law of attraction, if you don't let that, sounds delusional, but don't let that, mess with you. Don't pay attention to kind of that thing happening to you. Ignore that. Kind of ignore that and go about your own way. Act like you can't fail. I know, acting like you can't fail, hard to do and sounds delusional, but that's a good thing to do. Try things. A lot of people failed at a lot of things, and failure is good. I think, at least learning about it. It takes a lot of stuff, a lot of things. I mean, Tony Robbins said, when you succeed, you party. When you fail, you ponder. And all success comes out of pondering. When you learn new things, failing makes you more humble, makes you want to learn new things. And also, there's a difference between being, you can be humble and have high self-esteem. I think low self-esteem is something that really holds a lot of people back, because I remember one time, and this was pretty like profound when I was young, and I remember, it was a family friend, and she was talking about her son, and her son was probably, I don't know, man, like 15, 16 at the time. And she's talking about how her son said when he turned 18, he was planning on getting his own apartment and moving out. And she was like, he's going to realize how hard it is, how tough it, he's not going to be able to, just all like negative, like how he's, it's going to be so hard. And I'm just thinking, like, he wasn't even asking or wasn't even trying to achieve that much. Like, just his own apartment to rent. Like, that's not that. He's not asking for no mansion. It's not that big of a freaking, you know what I mean? Just some shelter on his own. Like, that's not that big of an ambition. I mean, you look at now, I mean, I see like, there's 13-year-old kids that became millionaires. And I'm sure they're not that much. I'm sure they're not that much smarter than me or you. You know what I mean? I see like on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, there's people who are like, there's people popping up. They're like 18, they're 20. They're I think some of them probably do better than I do. You know, better than most of us do. So it's not really, you know, absolutely not impossible. And I don't. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but they don't seem like they have any special, you know, real gift. It just seems like they were willing to try and messed around with some stuff, and then, you know, finally something worked. You know, that's what it seems like. You know, that's the main thing there, and you should use that as motivation. I think like a lot of people, they see people like I don't even know much about these names, but like, you know, Jake Paul or somebody else like with YouTube or social media who got big, and they're like, oh, he's an awful person, this, that, all criticizing him. Like, use that as motivation. Like, if you think he's dumb and you think he's, and they're all, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong by any means. But if you think you're better than them and you know more than them and they're dumb and all this, then why aren't you? Why aren't you a multimillionaire? Why aren't you? You know what I'm saying? You know, you see a lot of people. They're all talking on you, they comment on YouTube videos. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, this and that. Well, you know, why aren't? If you know better, then why don't you just do your own thing? You know, why are you wasting your time? You know what I mean? That's a thing too. And I think a lot of times what people criticize others for, they are guilty of a lot of times. That's the thing too. Like, growing up, there were so many people that used to always, not just me, but they used to always be so bragging. Like, I'm gonna drive a Bugatti when I'm old, maybe not a Bugatti, a Lamborghini, this and all that. When I'm 20, all that, I'm gonna be so successful. You're not. I'm smarter than you. Where are they now? Nowhere. They're just completely average. They're the thing that they were kind of completely not getting on board towards, completely not getting on board towards. So they kind of jinx themselves, I think. And I think the thing, they kind of always criticized people. That's a big part of this. They always, I'm not going to say, quite a few people like this growing up. They always criticize people with kind of average jobs, average lives. And that's where they are. That's where they are right now. They became guilty of the thing they criticized others for. So keep that in mind. That's absolutely, you know, coming back to bite you. And I don't even wish, you know, I kind of wish they did do the things. It's kind of a shame they weren't able to do the things that they really wanted to do. You know, when they were younger, there were things they really talked about a lot. And that's the thing too. I feel like the other thing too, you talk about all these goals, and people's negative energy just comes back at you. You want to kind of keep quiet about it, I would say. And you want to have high self-esteem, because low self-esteem is going to just screw you up and think you're not deserving of anything and just deserving of nothing. You want to have high self-esteem, but at the same time, you want to be humble and kind of quiet about that, because you know, I was man, I was eating breakfast this morning at like outside, sitting outside like a cafe, and I was like overhearing some people talk about it, like oh, Miami, you know, like all these people trying to show off. They're the ones with the rented cars and the rented, you know, rented stuff, all the rented Lamborghini or whatever. They don't really have the money, but the people with the real money, they're not trying to show it off. You know, they don't need to show it off. That's the main thing. You don't need to like brag about your accomplishments. People just know about it. You don't need to tell anybody about it. You know, people find you're so good that others can't ignore you. And people talk about too, like, oh, you got to work so hard for this, that, and that's not like, there's something to be said about hard work and discipline, but I feel like that's just mainly, you know, work through the corporate ladder for 90 years and then, or 45 years, whatever, and then get what you know, it's not, that's more of just like the concept of work, and then get get a reward when you're later in so many years and don't have the, you know, what you really want. So it's not really true. It's more about, I'd say, you know, obviously work hard, but have the belief that you deserve what you want instantly. Now, time is linear too. You know, time is very linear. You know, if we're in a simulation, it's just completely, it doesn't even, it's like a thing that doesn't even really exist to a certain extent. Hard to explain this stuff, but I think that ultimately, you want to kind of be like, have fun with it. Don't take things too seriously, because you really don't have the time you think you have. You know, I feel like the people who always are thinking about like, oh, I have so much time, they never really get that much done. You need to have a sense of urgency. Robert Greene says this. I think it's a very important concept. You need to have a sense of urgency. So say you're 20 years old even. You're 1/4 of the way to 80. If you're 25, you're 1/4 of the way to 100. I mean, maybe you'll live to 100. Okay, maybe not. A lot of people, I see a lot of people dropping when they're in their 70s, and a lot of them didn't even seem that unhealthy. A lot of them did not seem like they would be dying in their 70s, in my opinion. But yeah, so you're 1/3. If you're 25, you're 1/3 of the way to the end. If that happens, I mean, theoretically, you would live longer with the technology, but you need to have a sense of urgency. And that's not to say that you can't do things when you're older. No, but you need to be starting on it like now. You know what I mean? You need to be starting immediately, starting quickly. And if something doesn't work out, then just move on to the next thing quickly. But not, you do it at the same time. Like there's a counter to everything. You want to kind of think things out. And I think one thing that Naval Ravikant said, and I this quote definitely helps me a lot. I think is if you can't decide on something, the answer is no. So if you can't decide if you want to do something, the answer is that you shouldn't do it. I would say, and think about doing something else. Go to the drawing board a little bit before you decide to do something. It needs to be like a enthusiastic yes, in my opinion. You need to be kind of enthusiastic. It needs to be an enthusiastic yes. If it's not an enthusiastic yes, then it's probably not going to work out. And that's kind of like how you find something that you have a passion for, a relationship that you want to be in, even anything like that. Anything like that. You want to have more of an enthusiastic yes. And I think patience does, all these principles, discipline, patience, very, very important. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is kind of just, feeling like you already have what you want. Law of attraction, feeling, deserving it, visualizing the positive things. A lot of people, use your imagination against you. It's hard to have. Like that's probably the biggest thing a lot of people struggle with. It's hard to have really positive thoughts when you're constantly. I think our brains in a lot of ways are programmed to always think of the worst possible scenario. Instead you should be thinking of the best possible scenario. And there's a lot of things you could do to kind of improve that. Meditation's one. I think exercise would help you. Two, being in the present moment, stuff like that could absolutely help you with that. I think that being around people who are more positive, good mentorship, that's obviously going to help you. Dan Pena talks about stuff like that a lot. I think that's pretty important because they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. And I think that's pretty much true. I mean, but in this modern age, like, you could listen to people on the internet, listen to podcasts, audiobooks, stuff like that, and that could kind of play a part in that. But I think there still is a big influence to who you're hanging around with. Like if everybody you're hanging around with, is getting into things that aren't good, you're probably more likely going to. I'm not saying it's 100%, but you're probably more likely not going to end up going down a good path. And vice versa. If you're hanging out with everybody who's very successful, you're probably going to most likely be able to become more successful, So I think that's the big thing to look for. Look for people, with common kind of interests. Like if you're somebody who wants to be, what do you want? There's different, things that you could want. Do you want to, I don't know, get in shape, hang out with, try to make friends with people that are in shape, so they could use their advice. I mean, there's some certain niches, certain things where it's harder to find people that you want to improve on, but you could absolutely, especially with the internet, especially with things like that. And the thing too is like there's a lot of like bad advice out there. I think like there's a lot of nonsense out there. There's a lot of like just bad advice in general. I think like there's things that you're not going to go into too many details on it, but there's a lot of things that like we were told growing up that just aren't true. There's a lot of things that and you look at just one example, like we know that like a lot of smart people, a lot of studies have shown that like seed oils, vegetable oils are pretty bad for you and worse than like using butter to cook with. This is just one example. And yet so many people think the opposite. So many people think that butter is going to clog your arteries. That's what's going to have you to heart attacks. You should use the vegetable oils instead. It's kind of like opposite. A lot of stuff is kind of the not everything, but a lot of stuff just the way I remember like I'm not gonna say this example, but people are, just people I meet are just so like, it seems like I could be wrong on this, but it seems like they're just living their lives like completely. They seem like they're in a different world almost. Maybe I'm the one who's in the different world and I just don't know what I'm doing. Maybe, who knows? That's the thing with life. But it just seems like so many people, like the way things are divided, the way we're programmed. From a different, view. People just, it seems like you're in a different world. Everything is totally different. I mean, that's my, that's my kind of main thing, and that's kind of what's happening more and more as the division happens in our society. And I think some good things will ultimately come out of it. Some good things will ultimately come out of it. Some good things come out of everything. That's stoicism. That's another big point to read about. Stoicism is huge. Law of attraction is huge. I think those are two very important things to study, and I want to go back and study them a little bit more because you forget about stuff changes. I would say law of attraction is probably the most important thing to kind of look into. Stoicism maybe number two, but yeah, that's the main thing I want to leave you guys with. I hope you got something out of this. Been on for about 21 minutes. Hopefully the audio was good. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, please subscribe to the channel. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye.